The letter he never sent. Wang YIBO hadn't been here in years. It was the kind of place you avoided unless you absolutely had to, where forgotten boxes sat like quiet witnesses to the lives you once lived and the selves you once were. He came up here today with no real intention other than to find his old skate shoes. A trivial errand, until his eyes landed on a wooden chest with faded brass lock, the initials XC carved faintly along one side. He froze. That chest didn't belong to him. Not originally. Anyway, it had been ZHAN's back in the early days, when they were just two rising stars orbiting each other in the bright, chaotic galaxy of China's entertainment industry. YIBO remembered the night he'd ended up with it, too, a hurried exchange in a dressing room. ZHAN saying, "Keep this for me, I'll get it later," and then later never came. The lock had been broken long ago. Inside, beneath yellow photographs and ticket stubs, YIBO found it, an envelope never sealed, his name written in a handwriting he could recognize even in the dark. He shouldn't read it. He was going to read it. The letter. YIBO, by the time you read this, if you ever do, I hope I'll have already said everything in person. But you know me. I'm better at building worlds with paper and ink than with my voice. Words fail me when you look at me the way you do. I don't know when it started. Maybe the day you corrected my dance step during rehearsal, or the night we stayed up till dawn talking about the kind of people we wanted to be. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as just another co-star. The world will never allow me to say this out loud. You and I know how fragile our careers are, how quickly admiration can turn to scandal. But here, in this letter, I'll say it. I care for you in ways I can't explain without changing everything. If I could, I would trade all the noise, all the cameras, for just one day where it's only us. No brands, no scripts, no publicists. Just you, laughing that rare laugh of yours, the one you don't let them photograph. If you feel the same, maybe one day we'll find a place where it's safe to be honest. If you don't, burn this. Wang YIBO sat on the floor of the attic, letter trembling in his hands, the words hitting him like a freight train. He could almost hear ZHAN's voice, the slight hesitation between sentences, the way he always tested the air for danger before saying anything real. For years ago, that was the height of the untamed craze. Back then, they'd been everywhere together, in interviews, fan meets, endorsements, a storm they couldn't escape. And yet, reading this now, YIBO realized he hadn't noticed a real storm brewing under the surface. He remembered ZHAN disappearing for a few weeks after a certain press tour. Rumors had flown, as they always did. Creative break, the press release had called it. But what if it had been something else? What if it had been because of this letter? Because ZHAN had written it and then lost the courage to send it? What was left unsaid? YIBO didn't know whether to feel regret or anger or something far more dangerous. The truth was, he had felt something back then too, a connection deeper than the endless schedules and scripts. He'd buried it under work, under the safe distance of professionalism, because the industry was not kind to men like them. But this unsent letter felt like an accusation wrapped in longing. It was a what if made tangible. And what if is the most dangerous ghost a man can meet. The weight of silence. That night, YIBO lay awake, replaying the last 4 years in his mind. The award shows, the awkward pauses in interviews when someone brought up their chemistry, the way ZHAN's eyes sometimes lingered just a moment too long before he looked away. He began to realize that silence had been the third person in every room they shared. It had sat between them at dinners, traveled with them in cars, followed them backstage. Neither of them had dared to speak first. And now, ZHAN wasn't here. The chance to reply in real time was gone. A quiet confrontation. 2 weeks later, fate, or perhaps sheer bad luck, forced him into the same green room before a charity concert. YIBO had almost skipped the event, but some invisible hand had pushed him here, letter burning a hole in his pocket. ZHAN walked in, looking almost exactly the same as he had 4 years ago, except for a tiredness around the eyes that fame never admits to in public. He stopped short when he saw YIBO. "Hey," ZHAN said softly. YIBO pulled the letter from his pocket and placed it on the table between them. ZHAN's eyes widened and shuddered, as if bracing for an explosion. You never sent it, YIBO said. I know. Why? Xiao Zhan's laugh was short and humorless. Because some truths aren't safe. Not for you, not for me. YIBO stared at him. So you just let it go? I had to, Xiao Zhan said, voice breaking almost imperceptibly. We had too much to lose. The choice. In that moment, YIBO understood something cruel and beautiful. Love is not just about what you feel, but what you're willing to risk. Xiao Zhan had chosen safety over confession. And maybe YIBO had, too, all along. They didn't resolve it that night. There was no cinematic kiss, no sweeping declaration. Just two men sitting with the weight of a letter that had waited too long. Epilogue. The audience that never knew. Weeks later, during a live interview, a host asked YIBO what he'd keep if he had to give up everything else from his career. He smiled, glancing at Xiao Zhan, who was seated just a few feet away. My memories, he said simply. The audience cheered, not knowing the depth of that answer, not knowing about the letter in his jacket pocket. The one he still couldn't bring himself to burn, because some ghost, once found, refused to be buried again. The box in the corner extended. The attic greeted Wang YIBO with the kind of chill that seeped straight through his hoodie. The air was heavy with the smell of forgotten winters, stale wood, moth-eaten fabric, and that faint metallic tang of things left untouched for years. He hadn't planned to be here. In fact, he'd been halfway through making coffee when the thought struck him that maybe, just maybe, his old skate shoes were still up here. A dumb impulse, but the kind he was prone to when his brain wanted to avoid bigger things. A single shaft of light spilled from the small, grimy window, catching dust motes midair like slow-falling snow. His footsteps creaked against the floorboards as he moved between stacks of cardboard boxes labeled in his own hurried handwriting. Tour 2018 motorcycle parts, fan gifts fragile. He almost didn't see it. Wedged into the darkest corner, half covered by an old denim jacket, was a wooden chest. Not a cheap one. This was solid, well-crafted, the kind of box that looked like it had been built to keep secrets safe. The brass fittings were tarnished, and along one side, faint but unmistakable, were the carved initials, XZ. YIBO froze mid-step. It wasn't his. It never had been. He knew exactly where it came from, and who it belonged to. The memory came back in a rush, vivid and unwelcome, backstage at a cramped dressing room. For years ago, Xiao Zhan, dressed in stage clothes, hair damp from rehearsal, standing too close, always too close, as he shoved the chest into YIBO's hands. Keep this for me, he'd said, eyes darting around as if the walls themselves could be listening. I'll get it later. Later never came. YIBO had never opened it. He wasn't sure if it had been respect, fear, or simply the fact that he'd shoved it in the attic and done what he was best at, avoiding what hurt. But now, here it was, waiting. The lock on the front hung crooked, already broken. The decision was made for him before he could even pretend to hesitate. He knelt, flipping open the lid. The smell hit first, not dust, but something warmer, familiar. Paper, faint cologne, maybe even a ghost of particular laundry detergent he hadn't smelled in years. Inside were pieces of another life. A stack of photographs, edges curling, of candid moments he didn't remember anyone taking. Ticket stubs from concerts they'd attended together in disguise, caps pulled low to hide their faces. A broken watch YIBO recognized instantly. Xiao Zhan had dropped it in a parking lot once, cursing as the glass cracked. And then, nestled between the watch and a folded scarf, an envelope, cream-colored, edges slightly yellowed with time. It wasn't sealed. His own name stared back at him in careful, almost hesitant handwriting. The moment stretched thin, every sound amplified, the hum of the attic silence, the faint pounding of his heartbeat in his ears. He shouldn't. He was going to. The first words. The paper inside felt fragile, as if it might disintegrate if he breathed too hard. His eyes scanned the opening line, and the years between then and now collapsed like a stage set being dismantled. YIBO, by the time you read this, if you ever do, I hope I'll have already said everything in person. YIBO's breath caught. It was Xiao Zhan's voice in his head, low and careful, the way it always got when he was saying something that mattered. Each sentence pulled him deeper into a reality he didn't know existed back then. It wasn't just admiration in the letter. It wasn't even friendship. It was something else. Something that had been there, hiding beneath the surface of every laugh, every late-night conversation. Every time their hands had almost touched but didn't. The words were raw, unpolished in places, as if ZHAN had been racing to get them down before courage left him. They spoke of moments YIBO had half forgotten. A rehearsal correction. A night they'd talked until dawn. Moments that apparently had meant more to one of them than the other ever realized. And then, the line that stopped him cold. If I could, I would trade all the noise, all the cameras, for just one day where it's only us. Only us. It was the kind of sentiment no one dared voice in their world. In an industry where every glance was dissected, every gesture spun into headlines, this was more than risky. It was dangerous. The final paragraph was both confession and a challenge. If you feel the same, maybe one day we'll find a place where it's safe to be honest. If you don't, burn this. YIBO lowered the letter slowly, his hands shaking. The shockwave. He sat back against a stack of boxes, letter still in his lap, staring at nothing. The attic felt smaller now, the air heavier. Why hadn't ZHAN given it to him? Why write this and then bury it in a box, in a chest in his attic? The answer was there, in the silence of the years that had followed. They'd both known the rules. There wasn't a world where feelings like this could exist without cost. Careers could crumble overnight. Reputations could be shredded before breakfast. Still, YIBO couldn't help wondering. If he'd known back then, would things have been different? Would he have stepped forward instead of holding back? Or would he have done exactly what ZHAN had done? Fold the truth into paper and hide it away? He thought back to those days, to the subtle tension that hummed between them during the untamed promotions. The way ZHAN's eyes sometimes lingered on him before darting away. The way they both chosen their words so carefully in interviews, as if afraid of letting too much slip. Had it all been in front of him the whole time? Unfinished business. A creak from the hallway below jolted him back to the present. He quickly folded the letter, sliding it into his hoodie pocket like contraband. He didn't know what he was going to do with it yet. He only knew one thing. The letter had not been burned. That had to mean something. As he closed the chest and stood, the room seemed to tilt slightly, not from the attic's uneven floorboards,